Hello there, this is Rom Wills coming back at you with yet another podcast dealing with different classes of women. And I wanted to address that because one thing I'm seeing, and this is definitely something for the select manosphere. Because the thing is, it's not limited. Select men are never limited to what people might call Pookie and Ray Ray or thugs, whatever you want to call it, bad boys, rednecks or something. Because one thing with the whole select, non-select thing, that thing is global. When I published my book, Nice Guys and Players, in September of 2000, the book sold all over the world. Still does. It still does. So that thing is bigger than just a black community, which some people think I'm just focusing on one community. In fact, when it first sold, they didn't sell as well in the black community. It actually sold globally better. So, and that's just one of those things. But one of the things about it, though, when I'm talking about class, you're dealing with different classes of women. So, yeah, you got the lower class dudes, but then you also got the professional men who are definitely considered select, right? And then I know about dealing with different classes of women just from my own personal background. Let me just share that real quick, just to share my perspective. It ain't something I read about. Now, some people who follow me a long time know I said I spent some time in Southeast D.C., Anacostia. For those from around that way, I used to live around 16th and Good Hope Road. And I'm not sure what it looked like now because of stuff like gentrification, and I think they really fixed up around there. But back in the 70s, man, it was rough as hell. Plus, you had the mental institution that was in that area too, St. Elizabeth's, and you got the patients getting out during the day and hanging out in the neighborhoods and stuff. So it was a bad area. Now, in that area, of course, you encounter, it's like mostly if you use the BGS octane model, which was genius. It's 85s. It's the ratchets, lower class and stuff. Like personally, I use the more the same class levels that sociologists will use, and you'll understand in a second why I do. But so started there, but some circumstances, me and my sister had to live with my grandmother. So, but she was more, I ain't gonna say upper class. She was more at the edge of upper middle class, at the edge of it, just from her family. Like, it was interesting because when I was in my mother, she was just that type who just, even though the rest of the family had a bunch of stuff, she just wanted to be on her own thing. You always get one. I've said that before, but that it is what it is. But once you moved up a bit, grandma was like, well, you need to go to this private school. So that went to Archbishop Carroll. That jumped me up. So whereas at first I'm being around some 85, start being probably pretty much skipped over the 87s and, more like the working class, and started dealing with more the middle class when I went to high school at Archbishop Carroll High School in D.C., Catholic school. And then most of the women I was dealing with, unless I went to the go-go, but most of the women I could call friends and stuff, they were like at minimum 89s and future 92s. In fact, one of the women who really effectively imprinted me mentally is a PhD now in AKA Alpha Kappa Alpha, and especially for those in the black community, and those who actually went to college, those sisters are like upper class, bougie, even though they get some working class women sneaking in there, but for the most part, that's a bougie sorority, right? Nothing but love for y'all AKAs listening. Nothing but love for y'all. My co-parent is AKA, and even on my IG, I'm at an upper class event with an AKA. So, and y'all can check my IG and just see that. She wearing the pearls and everything. 6-figure attorney. But anyway, So, started there, started dealing with a different type, and then college, St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia, and then for my advanced degree at American University in Washington, D.C., started dealing with it. So just through life, just had a chance to like see all of them, experience all of them. Now, understand something. As I said, this class thing is global. This class thing, because I got a lot of brothers who listening to me. It's probably mostly brothers, and a lot of times when I say stuff, they think I'm just talking about black women, or their perspective is just a black community. That thing is global. Like where I live now, we got, even though the zip code I live in, I'll give you the zip code, it's 21015. Right? If you look it up, the median income is over six figures. Yet, despite that, we got a few 85s in the area, and 85 whites. Let me say it again: 85 white women, class-wise, just because of Section 8, and maybe somebody's nice enough to rent out their house or something to someone on Section 8. All right, but then at the same time, you also got the 92s, and if you use the more sociological thing, upper class in this area. It's amazing. You got a trailer park on one end, and then you got like some big mega mansions on other end. So it's an interesting area. And then I know about the global aspect of it just from personal experience. Because in the mid 90s, I actually lived with an upper class Asian woman. She was from Japan. And I mean, to say she's upper class is nothing. I remember she took me for my birthday to this one of those expensive restaurants where they don't bother having the prices. And the bill was like about $800, and she paid it like it was nothing. So for my birthday. So that class thing is all over. And it's important. The reason why I'm even talking about it, right? Because I just gave you my background, gave you my perspective, why I know these things. But when you deal with them, it's not all the same. Like for example, I mentioned the whole Pookie and Ray Ray thing people like to talk about, or whatever people call it in their particular community, or racial community, whatever. Yeah, you do have some women who dealing with them, chasing them, but those are mostly 85s and 87s. Shout out C.Boogie. He had mentioned that. A lot of guys are focused on that lower class, but then that says where they at. Because it changes up. It changes up at different classes, because the thing is, women want something different. Now, because even, like I said, where I'm at, the county I'm in is predominantly white. And I've seen like the 85 white girls. And you know who they dealing with? They dealing with some rough, tattooed white boy. Like rough, look like you rather stay on the good side than the bad side. And you got some of them working class, or some maybe working at some local stores. Right, but then one of the gyms I go to is mostly like solidly middle class, and you'll get those like more middle class or more 89, 92 white girls. They coming in, the dudes come in, no tattoos, clean shaven, clean cut, everything. And just remember, and see, that's the thing. All the women ain't going to look at stuff the same way, period. Then they're going to respond the same way. Like, as you move up in social class, the woman is more concerned about your behavior. It's not even so much about your money, but your behavior. Also, status does play a part. Now, I know publicly I said you can beat money and status, but I've never said it doesn't work, because you get a lot of women, depending as they move up in class, they meet you, they might think, oh yeah, he real attractive, but then they looking for some clues as to your class level. And if they can't tell, they'll start asking some questions. Like, I'll give you an example again. I mentioned the thing about, the sister I was in, AKA, I was at an upper class event. A black woman, upper class. Like, I'm in the same room with some actual boule. And I remember, and I mentioned this before, I got in there, they asked my name, and they wanted my whole name. And everything was like the same thing. Education, where you educated at, what you do for a living. The conversation is always the same and how they were carrying themselves. And I even said, you get in a community, a lot of dudes will talk about, well, these some single moms, they got weaves, they out of shape. But at this upper class event, you couldn't find a single weave. I couldn't find a single tattoo. The majority, only women who were even slightly out of shape, was like the older women. And when I say slightly, I do mean slightly. And all the dudes there, they weren't even on any thug thing. Shit, they were just clean cut too. Clean cut, sharp, masters of the universe types. Even in, like I said, you can check my IG for this. The woman who's around my age, I'm 54. She around my age. You look at it and tell, silver fox, but built better than most 20-year-olds. So it's a big difference in everything when you're dealing with it, and that's an important thing to understand. Like as soon as you meet the woman, this regardless of what her race is, as soon as you meet her, you need to get an idea about what her social class is, because it speaks to what she's, type of person that she's going to want to deal with. Because with the exception of those very attractive women, regardless of race, who can move up because of their beauty and stuff, like those 100 octanes or those, what really, and BGS can, he has talked about this, like, a lot of those 100 octanes are the same as the 85s but because of their beauty, they can move up to like maybe a rich man or something. That gets a little bit into acculturated prostitution and, gold digging and stuff. All right. But, everybody else though, the overwhelming majority of other women, they stay in their class. In fact, I could tell a lot about a woman's social class by just looking who she walking around with, who she find attractive. And what's happening with a lot of men, honestly, and this is regardless of race, a lot of times they just caught in a weird place. Like, I'll just say, okay, since I have mostly black male listeners, a lot of times the argument about Pookie and Ray Ray is because these guys are in a weird place. They're a little bit above, they definitely above Pookie and Ray Ray. They definitely got something going on. But because they might not have that same class status, the more upper class women, they ain't gonna give them a time of day unless they drop dead handsome. That's the only exception. And even in cases where somebody think one of those women is dropping down, usually if you check that woman's background, she was from the hood too. Because you do get some women who might move up socially. But if when you get them off their job into like how they actually behave, they just an 85 who was able to move up to a 92 like publicly, but they still got the behavior of an 85, so they look for that male. Always understand that. It's a very important thing. Like I said, the majority of women stay with their classes. So like if you're trying to approach a woman, and this is one thing, I actually taught a webinar on this with my private group. I taught a webinar, they know it. I actually broke it down in like different classes, what they specifically look for. You got to know, and you got to say, well, is this a woman I can deal with? Because it's like, unfortunate, like I said, when you get those upper class women, shit, they picky as hell. They can think you fine, and they might, like on a low, if you real fine, if you an out for showpiece, they'll deal with you. They'll deal with you on a low. But then they'll be like, those will be the main ones, say, okay, you can't act like you know me in public. All right? But only if you not an out for showpiece, they ain't going to deal with you. Unless you on that level. Because like I said, I've always said you can beat that money and status thing, but it's still there anyway. It's still there. And, when you get those, because basically, when you get those more upper class women, that's why, in fact, if you look at the women complaining, regardless of race, about a shortage of men, they usually the more educated women. Is more of a class thing. Like, if you really look at it, working class women, they don't really be complaining about men. And shoot, the lower class ones, 85s, poor regardless of race, they don't complain about what their complaint is just they dealing with some trifling behavior, but they always have men lined up. I've personally seen that. They will have men lined up. Working class women, shit, like the 87s, they all right. It's usually when they get up there a bit. Once they get up there, they have a degree. You know, they got some status. They still keeping their looks. They looking for that man who they basically looking for. Honestly, they looking for an alpha showpiece who also got a law degree or is a medical doctor. That's their ultimate thing, and it's harder as you get up there. You know, and there's a lot of them would rather be alone, or then you get some of them, and Cousin T-Talk can speak to this. Some of them, well, they'll find a gigolo, had that boyfriend experience or whatever. But that's the thing. You got to understand that. One thing I'm going to do in my next one, I'm going to talk more about really getting that top-notch woman, though. Because understand something. I say this, and like I said, that's why I share my background and stuff. And I've dealt with, I say from the beginning of college, dealt with mostly like women who would be considered 92 octanes. And that's just because of the access I had. I had access to them. And you know, you talk to them and say, oh, went to this school. Saw that bad. I mentioned that before when I went to high school. As soon as I started I could tell young women ahead, I went to Carroll, that was a phone number right there. But that was also the status of it. So, you know, I'm going to get more into getting those top-notch women. But dealing with them, you got to understand where they at and where you're at. So anyway, that's all I got for today. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace and blessings.